From the heart of the Arab region's history, the whole world hears every year a story's echo that has become source of each voice fighting for good and denying the access of evil. The story you're about to hear is no regular story. It is the story behind every urge of justice, every love for humanity, and every sense of dignity. This echo peals in the first month of the lunar year and distributes to humans bunches of sadness and tears, inlaid with wreaths of glory, victory, and revolution, engraving the word no in every state of injustice, oppression, and hatred by the scent of love, honesty, and dedication. The source of this echo is the holy city of Karbala in today's Iraq. Its birth was in the year 680, when the first drop of blood fell from a man whose name was Hussein bin Ali. A drop of blood that shook the silence of the desert sands, despite the blare of 30,000 men with their armors and horses, continuing to obey the throne of each tyrant, each arrogant, and each dictator. Before sailing through the alleys of history and relive those moments in great attitudes, here's a quick glance on the most epic characters and their surroundings. The focus is a man named Hussein. His mother is Fatima al-Zahra, the most beloved daughter in the eyes of the Prophet Muhammad. His father is Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Imam leader of the Muslims, and his brother Hassan, who in order to prevent the strife between the people of Hijaz and Sham, renounced his right to succession, protecting the blood of Muslims, when Muawiyah, governor of Sham, decided to attack the Islamic State that was built by the Prophet Muhammad, and developed by his companions, by threatening the governors of the cities and by arresting the supporters of the Imam and having them imprisoned. 20 useless years went by with Muawiyah as governor, and eventually got ill. He sent letters to his governors in the different cities to take the pledge of alliance to his son Yazid, violating thereby the agreement of peace he had with the rightful successor, Imam Hussein. Muawiyah died before achieving his objective. Yazid persisted to take the pledge of alliance by himself and was willing to kill whoever was to deprive him from it. The people of Medina, the city of Messenger of God, including the greatest heads of the nation at the time, refused pledging Yazid because he was known across the entire nation from his cruelty, arrogance, and addiction to alcohol. When this denial came to Yazid, he ordered the governor of Medina to harass whoever was behind this decision, and especially Hussein. And if he refuses, Yazid specifically ordered to have him killed even if he was tied up to the Kaaba, contravening thereby one of the most important rules of God, prohibiting violence in the sacred mosque of the Kaaba. The pressure on Imam Hussein by the followers of Yazid was expanding, so he decided to gather his friends and family and head out to Mecca and then to Kufa, after receiving thousands of letters insisting on to join them. The day before his departure, Hussein waited until the night reached its darkest hour and left his home, intending the grave of his grandfather Muhammad. Embracing his grandfather's grave with such deep love spreading through the purest soul, Hussein left the grave recalling the very words of his grandfather, telling him that a day would come where Hussein will stand to defend the right beliefs of Islam and the rights of all Muslims, and die for that cause, drowning in his own blood in the land called Karbala. With his arrival to Mecca, Hussein attempted to reach the sacred mosque following the footsteps of his grandfather Prophet Abraham. But Yazid's men were on a lookout for Hussein, as they were searching for him from city to city, from land to land, preparing themselves to kill him before he could gather any supporters. So Hussein decided to leave Mecca and travel to Kufa. Before leaving Mecca, Hussein conveyed his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil to inform the people of Kufa of his arrival. Hussein left Mecca with thousands of his followers who were to stand by him and fight the rulings of the Umayyad, carrying with them the slogan that Hussein said after the first moment he left the city of Medina: "I do not seek harm nor injustice, nor do I seek corruption of this nation, but I seek for justice. We must do what is right and end what is evil. I want that message of the God that was given to us by His Messenger Muhammad to proceed the way it should proceed. On his way out of Mecca, Hussein found out that his ambassador, Muslim ibn Aqil, was betrayed and killed by the ruler of Kufa and his people. Hussein informed his companions and ordered them to pass on the message to all his supporters. The death of Muslim did not change one step in Hussein's path, but made him persist in his divine objective to put an end to injustice and oppression and enlighten lives with freedom and pride, following the footsteps of his grandfather Muhammad. A breeze of fear began to hit the tents of many supporters, until they lost their own will to fight for their own freedom, vanishing from Hussein's convoy throughout the darkness of the night, leaving only a few loyal companions. The journey was about 20 days long when they eventually arrived to the boundary of Kufa, where they decided to stop, rest, and gather necessary supplies, especially water. Just before crossing the borders and entering the land of Kufa, Hussein's convoy was interrupted by an army of 1,000 knights, led by one of Yazid's greatest warriors, Riyahi. Seeking no harm, he asked Hussein if he could have some of the water they had gathered for him and his thirsty knights. Although they were the enemy, Hussein gave them water. After breaking their thirst, Riyahi warned Hussein not to enter Kufa and that Yazid was prepared to ambush him and his few companions. Hussein directly changed his path and headed north, not crossing into Kufa. They would travel from city to city, each time seeking the name and asking the name of the city. Generous people would invite them to stay and rest, but each time Hussein would respectfully refuse and continue his path as if there was something great awaiting for him further away, until he reached a land called Ninwa, also known as the land of Karbala. So he ordered his companions to stop and set their tents. Just when Hussein arrived to Karbala, the Umayyad had prepared an army of 30,000 men, led by Umar son of Sa'ad and Shimr son of Dil Jawshan, who were known for their cruelty. These men did not know the meaning of humanity. Their heart was filled with hate and brutality. Hussein tried diplomatic ways. He sent them letters using common sense, religious evidence, and ethical values. But unfortunately, it was like starting a fire in the bottom of the sea, useless and disappointing. On the 6th night of Muharram, Hussein was sitting alone in his tent. All eyes were on him, and all of Karbala was facing his direction. On that night, he was described as the Qibla itself. He was fulfilled with God's soul, Muhammad's blessing, and Ali's purity. While in his tent, his son Ali al-Akbar came and sat next to him and asked about his concerns. Hussein looked at the sky and put his hand on his son's head and said, "My son Ali, my concern is seeing in pain, seeing you suffer. My concern is seeing all those who are entering eternal agony on my behalf." "But aren't we the ones fighting for justice, father?" Ali asked. "Yes, by God," replied Hussein. "Then we shall not worry, father. Either we fight till death, or eventually death will come and find us," said Ali. On the dawn of the 7th day of Muharram, the enemy began surrounding Hussein's tent, and the lake of Euphrates became preventing them from getting to the water, hoping Hussein and his companions would weaken and die of thirst in the middle of the desert. The 9th night of Muharram was the night that Hussein told his companions and his family to say goodbye to each other, announcing that death will be awaiting them. They say when Hussein's family gathered in his tent, it seemed to be that all the stars have come down to earth and started to glide around the tent, gathering all the love affection. It was a night where God could have taken away the cloaks of darkness, and the light would have spread from Hussein's tent in Karbala. A man who was destined to lose all the members of his family in one single day, in one single hour, and to see them covered in their own blood, only trying to defend the right of humanity. If you could have peeked into the tents, you would see a mother looking at her son with pride, sneaking every moment a tear which she would wipe away immediately. You would see her hold her son's hand as if she was feeling the heat of his affection, telling it that he is about to break her heart with his death. And his sister looking at her brother, feeling an unbearable pain for seeing him leaving. You can see her embracing him and rubbing his back proud, as if he was about to attend a wedding of death. You would see a little girl putting her father's hand on her head, as if she knew she was about to become an orphan, trying to memorize his hand, that pure hand that was always feeding the poor, treating the ill, and helping the people in need. And another child, who would be too young to understand what was happening, looking at his father with confusion, not knowing if it would be the last time he would see him. Children asking for a few drops of water that could decrease the overwhelming thirst that had not stopped for 3 days. On the 10th day of Muharram, Hussein gathered his companions for morning prayer. He then sat with them and told them how much he deeply appreciates their loyalty, and how God will appreciate them for fighting for the sake of justice and humanity, and that whoever wanted to go home had every right to do so. Although they all knew that they were headed to ambush them and their families, not one of Hussein's supporters comprehended the thought of leaving him. They were such loyal companions that they would give their lives away and risk the lives of their families to protect the son of Muhammad and to fight for what is right. Hussein gathered his men of 70 and assigned them into positions, some as knights, some as archers, and some as regular soldiers. He then handed the flag to his brother Abu Fadl al-Abbas, known to be the greatest of the greatest warriors in the history of the Arab nation. Hussein told his men not to attack unless attacked. He then got closer to the enemy and reminded that he seeks no harm to anyone, and that what they are doing opposes the message of God. After Hussein finished his speech, the enemy began throwing rocks at Hussein by orders of Umar bin Sa'd. When all of a sudden, Hussein sees a man riding towards him from the battlefield. The knight approaches Hussein slowly with his head held down. Hussein looks at the knight and sees a familiar face. When Hussein got a clear look at him, he found that it was Hur al-Riyahi. Hur approached Hussein drowning in his own tears, shocking in his own words, begging Imam Hussein for forgiveness, begging him for forgiveness so that God can forgive him. Hussein gently wiped the mud off his face and said, Hur, you are as free in this life and the hereafter. You are as free as your mother named you. Not only he was a free man, he was a proud man, being the first one to be martyred fighting for Hussein. Hussein's people started to fight the opposition. Hussein's men were enormously outnumbered. Most of the arrows were aimed at Imam Hussein, but not one arrow was able to reach him. His men were throwing themselves before him, protecting him from the arrows showering from Yazid's army. Most of them were killed that way, but thankful that they had died protecting the son of Hussein.